All right, looks like recording is in progress. So, hey
Yeah.
everyone, welcome to our video podcast. My name is Amber Gorham. I'm the director of our Career and Life Center, and I also have Joni Porter with me here too. So, Joni, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Joni Porter. I am the Employer Relations and Event Coordinator in the Career and Life Design Center. So I'm happy to be with you guys today.
Yay, awesome. Thank you, Joni. And we also have Nick Cookinham, who is a great friend of the Career and Life Design Center. And so I'm going to let Nick introduce himself and tell us a little bit about where he's working, what he's doing. So Nick, tell us a little bit about your background, your job, your role, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a UCM grad myself, University of Central Missouri. I graduated my undergrad in 2018. I actually worked as a student it was at the time Career Services Center when I was there. And so I've known Amber and Joni for quite a while. I stayed at UCM to work in the admissions office as well as the advising center for a couple of years. I finished a master's in business administration there about a year ago at this point almost. And I recently, within the last 8 months or so, got a new position at a company called Ad Astra. It's a tech company that works in the higher ed space that really works with colleges on optimizing their scheduling and helping predict student demand and courses for having an appropriate number of seats and sections, as well as kind of space utilization and optimization on campus. So making sure your rooms are, filling at capacity and a lot of cool additional stuff that they do. But my role with them is client success consultant. Do a lot of customer relations management stuff, retention, and working with them on the day-to-day problems that they might have, and going on site after new client implements and kind of doing presentations to the broader campus of explaining here's what we do and how we're going to help you kind of be a little bit more efficient about what you do. So I've been doing it for 8 months and I love it. Very happy. I'm very appreciative of my time at UCM. It's where I cut my teeth in the working world and all my education and made great friends. But I am very much enjoying this new role.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Well, Nick, we really appreciate you joining us today, and we appreciate you really kind of talking through with us what it's like to work remote, because you've had the opportunity, you spent some time here at UCM, so you've definitely worked in person. Now you get the opportunity to work remote. So Joni's going to kick it off and ask us some questions as it relates to kind of that environment and what that's kind of like.
Yeah, so
sure.
Tell us a little bit about that transition from working full-time in person to a different remote schedule and what it's like to kind of manage that and how your workday looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely an adjustment when you first start doing it. So for any listeners or watchers, that kind of for context, when I started working at UCM in 2018, it was in office every day, 9 to 5.
Sure.
I started out living in town, though, walking distance from the university. So like I'd leave at 7:55 to get to the office by 8. Like it was easy. Then I moved out about 45, 50 minutes away, and that became a daily carpool thing. So almost an hour to campus, an hour home, still 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And I mean, it's a lot, but that just becomes your normal and you're used to it. I'm in office every day. That's just part of the role. That's what I do. I commute every day. That's what I do. And then when you go from that to when I initially started here, everything pretty much was remote. And they kind of went to 1 day a week in the office a couple months in for me being here, and then in the next month or two they're going to move to 3 days a week in the office, and that's where they're stopping. So that's kind of their plan on how COVID has changed things.
Sure.
But in that initial, I was in office driving every day to I just kind of wake up and hop on a computer. It's definitely different, and there's an adjustment period you have to go through in terms of mindset changes. And I'm sure everyone's different, but for me, when I was at work, I was at work, and then when I was home, I was home. I didn't have to take much of my work with me. When I was on campus, it was work mode, work zone. That's kind of where my headspace is. And then I would get home and then I would relax and decompress and cook dinner and just kind of relax, and I would work if I needed to, but that was the rarity, not the normal. And so the biggest adjustment and change is having to kind of get in that workspace while you're still home, right? Like, and it was, I like having the flexibility of being able to go into the office when I want to. Like me being more of a sociable guy, I enjoy being in office and making friends and talking with people that I work with. So that's another additional adjustment, is not, I mean, there's people that I've worked with for 8 months who I've never met in person. And, we do have remote employees in general, but also just from people who would normally be in the office that I just haven't met yet. So those are kind of the two things that would be a little bit, those are kind of the difficult things to transition, where I have to kind of, get my headspace to now I'm working, even though I'm still at home. And then also not being able to kind of meet people, or maybe have the best relationships that I could have if I was seeing them every day in person with my coworkers. And there's some strategies I've developed to kind of work on both of those things, but that's been kind of I'd say that was kind of the transition period. But then you get used to it. Once you kind of once you kind of work on these strategies, and again, we could probably go into that. It would probably be interesting for people to kind of what I did and but like once you do make that adjustment, it's very great. Like I said, like I have the flexibility to go into the office whenever I want to. Like, one day a week is kind of what's expected, but it's not mandated, or it's not, I can work from home all the week. Exactly. When we go to the 3 days, it will. And I've been kind of going in the office a little bit more anyway. And it's just having the flexibility to be able to do, I mean, doctor's appointments or taking my car to the shop or something like that. It's a little bit more flexible to be able to do that. The flip side of that coin that I would say, and maybe this isn't the case for all remote jobs, maybe this could just be particular to mine, but the flexibility that you make up those hours in additional ways, right? Like, I got to, I didn't have to take the day off work because I got to just take an hour to go to the doctor and come back, or drop my truck off at the shop. But because I do work from home now, my setup is here, I am more available to people beyond the regular 9 to 5 business hours. If my manager reaches out to me at 7 p.m., I'm going to respond, and I'm going to work a little bit at that point. So it definitely, there's a transition. It's kind of a little bit of a give and take there, but I've enjoyed it overall.
Yeah. You mentioned those strategies, Nick. Would you mind talking and elaborating on like what that has been for you, and maybe what does that look like initially to then maybe now being 8 months in?
Yeah, absolutely. So every individual is going to be different, right? But there's something that you do that usually gets you in a headspace of work or school or studying or getting something done, whatever that kind of drives that engine. Figure out what that is if you don't already know, and then try to bring that to your home space. And mine was kind of two things, which was initially I didn't have like a home office setup. Like right now I've got a desk and a chair and 2 monitors and that kind of thing. Initially, when I first started, because it was also new for me, I was just working on a laptop, and I would like sit at my kitchen table. I would sit outside. I'd be in my recliner, which again is very nice to do. But in terms of, and I still do that every once in a while, depending if I'm just kind of returning emails or something. But so again, that's kind of the nice part about being able to work from home, is as long as you're doing your work, it doesn't really matter where you're getting it done. But it was a little bit difficult for me to like, I kind of like having the this is work, this is home kind of break a little bit. And that line has blended with working from home in general, but I've tried to make that a little bit more structured. So when I started, I would just kind of carry my laptop around the house with me, and whatever work I needed to work, I would do. And then I'd be cooking dinner, I'm like steering, exactly. I'm steering the steak and responding to chats to people. So it's like, I would kind of do that. Right. But once I got the kind of setup that I've got now, my laptop doesn't leave my desk. It stays here. And so when I sit down, and even though I'm in my room still, technically I kind of have a larger area, but it's like, it's in the corner. It's just, I have a desk, I have my monitors, I have my stuff. And so it's like, now I'm sitting and then it's work. And then if I need to get up and take a break and walk around, I just do that. And then the other thing, the thing that drives me to get into work mode is music. And I would do it all the time in my office, at work, at UCM. And I mean, a lot of people, music kind of gets people going to work out or do whatever. So for me, I have a very large speaker that's sitting right next to me. And my roommates, they know at this point, like if I'm listening to music very loudly and like jamming out, I'm cranking away at work. And so it's like when I'm, responding to emails and doing a bunch of outreach and like, cranking through my kind of administrative stuff, I'll listen to me, and that gets me, I don't know, fired up or zoned in, where it's like, okay, now my energy is there and that's where I'm going. So find out whatever that thing is. For some people, it's the kind of melodic background noise that's kind of relaxing while they get into the zone of working, and it's kind of more fluid. For me, I'm a little bit more like, let's go. And so I listen to loud music and it gets me in the kind of zone of work. But then, like I said, I can't do that for 8 hours. So, you pause it, you take a little break and get something to drink and whatnot. But those are kind of some of the strategies that I developed of find out what it was that got me in the zone to work. And then that's what I would do. I would kind of a little flip switch in my brain, and now I'm working for 3-4 hours. And then the kind of separation of home versus work. When you're working remote, again, that's difficult to do, but you kind of find a way to do that and it helps.
Yeah.
And then like I said, I can still go in the office when I want to as well, and which is nice. But I've also kind of worked on the feeling more, I don't know if at home is the right word, but with a remote kind of position, or mainly remote office at this point. And kind of, like I said, knowing your coworkers and working with, like, the better relationship you have with your coworkers, the better it's going to be for you and your job just in general, right? Like if it's more of a friendly relationship as opposed to strictly a work one, or I don't talk to you after, I talk to you between the hours of 8 and 5, and that's it. Like, that's not great. Or I don't know who you are, right? And people are more willing to be flexible and help people out if they know who you are and have a more friendly relationship with you. So I've started doing I call it a first Friday happy hour. So within my company, what I've done has been like, hey guys, the first Friday of every month in Overland Park, kind of closer to where the office is, it's one Friday, starts at 4:30. We go and have appetizers. And even if people don't like drink, they just have a soda and hang out. Like, it's a place to, like, hey, let's get to know each other a little bit more. Do it once a month. If you can't make it this month, it'll happen next month. And trying to do things outside of the office is very helpful for me to get to know people. If you are like purely remote, there's a lot of Zoom stuff or Teams that you can do in terms of like, I've actually thought about doing that for our remote employees. It just I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet, but like, if you are remote, but you want to get to know people, I'm going to do, maybe I call it the third Thursday or whatever, where it's like, we do like a big Zoom thing like this, and there's some Zoom games that you can play. Like, but if you're in the working world post COVID or, whatever, it's like, it has changed kind of the way that people deal with work. Right. And thankfully we have a very honest and I very much enjoy our owner and CEO and founder. He said at a meeting, when we're going back to these 3 days a week, he goes, I don't have to like the change to acknowledge that the change has happened, and this is where we're going to be now. And so he said he's a big in-person guy. He would love to have everyone in the office 5 days a week back to the way that things were. He goes, that's not going to be the case. He goes, I recognize this. And so now this is just what we're going to do. And I accept that, and we'll move on from there. And which is very nice of him to say that. And because of that, working remote is a flexible option that a lot of jobs are doing now, or people might even just stay that way. And again, pros and cons to both of it. I enjoy it. I like having that flexibility, but I had to develop those, kind of strategies of getting to know my coworkers. How am I going to do that if I never see them in person? Or right now I'm working all the time, or I have no separation of work versus life, and it's just with me all the time. Or, man, I'm just sitting in my room right now and the TV's on. How do I get into work zone or work mode? How do I kind of flip that off? So learn what that is for you. Again, if you're watching and listening and kind of like this is new to you, or you haven't been in this world before, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. It'll be okay. But figure out what those things are for you that's going to make it feel more like work, and then implement those.
Yeah, I love that, Nick. That's great. I mean, I think you gave a lot of good advice, and I think helping folks understand what those boundaries are and how to set those boundaries and how to find those strategies that are going to work for them, I think is really important. As you think about transition, I'm really curious, as you're thinking about kind of going back to that like 3 day a week, do you get to pick what those 3 days are?
Yep.
Do you get flexibility in that?
Yes. So that's one of the biggest, if you're looking for a job and kind of job hunting or whatever, right now, a lot of companies have had to adjust to this new normal or this kind of flexible. Some haven't. Some have done a lot more than others. Some have just closed their in-person buildings and everyone is now remote. So it depends on what you're looking for. You do have a little bit of leverage when interviewing and kind of going through stuff now, because that was one of the big things that they said is, well, let me say this, set this up this way. In the working world now, there's a lot of open positions. They called it the great resignation from COVID, right? Where it was like, there's a lot of open positions, people are moving and transitioning. And very often people, I think just kind of in general, you get in your habits, you get in your flow and your way, and this is kind of how your life goes for a period of time. With
Sure.
COVID, that threw a monkey wrench into everything, and people who might have wanted to make the change but wouldn't for some time, or didn't even realize they wanted to make a change, that got them going and doing it. So people started going to different walks of life and different works and fields, and finding the right job for them that was going to accommodate a lot of this stuff. And so when you're going through and working and interviewing, when you're interviewing, ask what those are, ask what their policies are, ask what their, is it mandatory? Do I get to pick the days? Is there some flexibility? Because that was one of the things that they made sure to mention was like, we're not trying to lose anybody by, one policy or decision or whatever is not going to be accepted or widely approved by 100% of the people. Right? There's always going to be someone who, even if we went fully remote, there's people who are like, man, I would rather be in office. I don't like this. I don't want to work remote. Right. And same thing, vice versa. And so they said, we acknowledge that this is the best thing that we think we can do based on the studies and the data. As we had our HR person kind of talk about the research that they had looked into on this, so 3 days a week, talk with your team. It's better to be in office with your team, right? For collaboration and working together and strategy conversations, or even some kind of cross-departmental ones that you work with regularly. Like for me, it would be our support team. If someone's having an issue with our software, they submit a support ticket. I work with our team to move those along. So those types of decisions or conversations around like, when do we all want to come in if we can, and let's try to make that work on similar days. If we don't, it's not the end of the world. But they also said you will continue to have that flexibility, right? Like if you can't come in 3 days a week this week, that's okay. Just talk with your manager about like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to make it in this week. I'm gonna be working from home, but I've got too many appointments or things that are just not gonna make it. Because I still live 45, 50 minutes away from my office in the morning with traffic.
Sure.
Without traffic, it's like 25, 30. So it's not horrible, but it's still a little bit of a commute, right? And so they were like, you're going to be able to continue to have that flexibility that you need. They set the time frame for that starting like a month or two away. So they gave people time to, make childcare arrangements and prep for what's, we're going to be back 3 days a week. The other thing that I would say, be careful again for like listeners or watchers. Don't let, I would say, don't let this be the thing that keeps you from the job though. Like if they have a particular, like if it's the dream job, but they're fully in office and you're like, man, I would like to, have remote. Don't let that be the singular thing that keeps you from accepting the job. If it's going to be, good salary, benefits, right in your wheelhouse, what you want to do, like it's a scale, right? So weigh that out, where when it becomes something that you've done for a little while, you get used to it. Whether you're in the office 5 days a week, whether you're remote 5 days a week, whether you have flexibility there, it's like when things are constantly changing, that's what kind of makes things difficult. We were in office, now we're remote, now we're trying to go back, like the constant kind of shifting and changing there. That's where it's a little bit difficult to navigate as the individual or even as the company. But once they have those kind of set policies and procedures, if you're going through like, well, what is yours? If they're like, well, we do in office 5 days a week, we are flexible. So like if you do need to work remote a day here and there, we'll allow that. It's just not something that we are fully remote. And you're like, be open to that. If it's the right job, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. All right, Joni, what else? What else do you want to?
So how do you manage that work-life balance on a personal side? How do you, when do you shut it off? How, you talked a little bit about that, but maybe if you can go into a little bit more, do you set a routine every day? I'm pretty routine-based person. So if I was working at home, I'd have to make my coffee. I'd have to get dressed. I'd have to make my bed. And then it's like 8 o'clock. Now I go into my office space and work. What about you? How do you kind of structure your day and,
Yes.
turn it off?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically exactly what you said. It is that's my strategy. That's what I do because I'm a routine-based person myself. I like to I do the same routines and rituals in the morning and at night. I eat a lot of the same stuff. I remember when I was doing the personality assessment stuff for advising, and some people are definitely not that way. It's very funny to kind of see that, but I'm a regimented, regulated, and habitual person. That's just where I'm more comfortable. And that was one of the things where it was kind of like initially the work-life balance of like at UCM, it was work, and now I'm home. That's my routine, right? And so I just shut it off. And here, I do the same kind of thing. The I would advise that the normal would be you kind of treat it like a job, kind of like how Joni said, where, if I'm supposed to be online working starting at 8, maybe I wake up at 7, I get a shower, like Joni said, I make my bed every day. And then I usually eat like an apple or something for lunch or for breakfast. So something small, I'll do that. And then 8 o'clock comes on, I fire up my computer and I sit down and I start to work. And it's definitely a little bit different than I would say in an office, because people would be naive if they thought that people in the office were just working 8 hours a day straight. Like everyone talks, takes little breaks here and there, totally normal, totally fine. You're a little bit more productive that way. And so it's unrealistic for you to think that like I'm just going to go into my office, even if you have like your own office room, separated for 8 hours, then you come out like, man, what a good day. Like that was the end of it. No, it's okay. Like to take a little break, do what you gotta do. But so that's where I have my routines. I'll first thing I do, I check my team's chat, see if anyone's trying to get a hold of me early in the morning. I have support tickets that I monitor as soon as I log in the morning. And then I go through my email. I prioritize things, or I try to zero out my inbox first thing in the morning, and then I go into my admin projects that I have to do. Maybe I do those first 3 things, teams, tickets, inbox, and then I take a break, and then I walk upstairs, pet the dog, relax 5-10 minutes, come back down, start again. And then the shutting it off, I generally do at 5. And people, thankfully, at my work, they don't abuse the fact that a lot of people are generally available. My boss has very rarely reached out to me like well after hours or on a weekend or something. And you make up that time of being able to kind of be a little bit more flexible and relax maybe a little bit during the day. But I travel, I go on site. So, sometimes I take a trip down to Texas, and I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to make it to the airport, to catch my flight, to make it down there. We stay the night there and we leave early the next day. And then the most recent trip I'm thinking of, it was like I got in like Thursday night at like 6 or 7. I live an hour from the airport. And then I was in the office at 8 a.m. the next day because I had a meeting. So it's like, so sometimes you have to do that, right? Like, and that's kind of the balance of that, where if I do shut it off, I try to shut it off at 5 most days, where I don't feel bad about doing that. I will look at who messages me or who sends me an email after hours. I set notifications up on my phone so I can see what comes in. If there was something that's urgent, or my manager or the CEO or someone's like, hey, I need help or I need this, yes, I'll jump on and do it. But if it's like, hey, this is something that can wait, it's not a big deal, but I just wanted to get this to you before the end of the day, or, before it left my brain, kind of thing. The thing in terms of work life that's been interesting for me that I've had to make sure that I do is more social interactions that I maybe not normally would have had. Like, me being a sociable guy, I like to talk to people, make friends. That's, my job, right? And when I was in the office, I would take a break, walk around the office. When I was an advisor, there was 24 other advisors. I would stop by and chat for a minute, or come see you guys, or admissions or something, right? Like I used to do it all the time when I worked in admissions with you guys, you remember? And so I don't get that when I'm here. So what I've tried to do is make a little bit more of an effort to hang out with my friends a little bit more than I used to. Not saying I wouldn't before, but it was like I need that kind of
I was
social.
like, you're very relational. You're very much.
Yes. Yes. And so
And I get
need
that because I'm the same.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, and some people aren't, some people are okay with that. I think that some level of social interaction is good for anybody. You don't want to just be a hermit. I work from home and don't leave my house, but like, you need some level of social interaction, and this is good. The Zoom stuff, the team stuff, that's good. But by my 3rd or 4th hour long Skype call, I'm kind of fried, and I'm like, okay, I need to get away from the computer and talk to someone in person. And so thankfully I also live with a couple of roommates, so that helps with that. But I mean, if you've got, significant others or someone that you live with, like make an effort to talk with them a little bit more. Or I have friends that live in town, so I might just text someone, be like, hey, what are you doing? I just need to get out of the house for dinner. Let's go get an appetizer or something. Like I've made it a little bit more of an effort to do those kinds of interactions, because when I would work, like I said, I had people that I could talk to, and then when I would go home, I still had roommates, but I didn't felt the need to hang out, because I got a lot of social interaction during the day. And as an advisor, I had a revolving door of students in my office, every half hour. And exactly. And when I was an admissions rep, I traveled and spoke at fairs, so I would talk to hundreds of kids a day. But now I kind of feel that need a little bit more. So maybe some days I shut the laptop at 5 and I go out and hang out with friends. We go get dinner and walk around downtown or do something. Like I've made it a little bit more of a concerted effort to do that, because I need it. Otherwise if I just shut my laptop and then went 5 feet to my recliner to watch TV or YouTube or something, there would just be no interaction there. So we kind of finding those habits and ways to still get the work-life balance of, I do need to work, I'm in my work zone, but now that's done. And now social, and where's the interaction that I need for the day? Actually trying to make an effort to do that has been very helpful.
Yeah. Well, it's, I think, important to recognize that. It's good that you've recognized that, especially from somebody like you that has done the in-person stuff. You're doing, you've done the fully remote. Now you're doing, sounds like even some hybrid type stuff. I think just recognizing that and recognizing what you need is really important. And then, what works for you. Because I know in just the short time that we got to do it here, that was something I really learned of. Like, I do love working from home. I loved every aspect of it. But I think that balance of being able to kind of do a little bit of both, because I really did miss one, because just having such a good team and people I did truly enjoy working with, I missed those in-person connections. But I felt like in some situations I was definitely probably more productive at home in certain areas than maybe I am, because of sometimes those conversations that happen that take you away from what you're trying to get done. So finding that balance. Nick, as you think about students, what are some things that you would suggest or that you think might be challenges that students might not consider about working remote that you think would be important for them to think about?
The flip side of my coin that I just mentioned is the first thing that comes to mind. What is your, I don't want to say social life, but like, what is your support system? What is your team? What do you have around you currently?
Okay.
Some people, they, because of COVID and everything, the working remote, like working remote seems really sexy now, where it's like, I need to be able to work remote, or like, that's what I'm after. Like, I'm just going to, roll out of bed at 8:30 in my pajamas and, hop on, which, you can. You're right. Yeah, right. You're right. You can do that. But is that going to make you happy in your work? It's an aspect of it, but what are the other things, right? Do you like the job that you are actually doing, or is it just you like the fact that you can be remote to do a job that you don't really like? You're not going to be there very long, right? Or you probably shouldn't if you don't like your job. If you live somewhere new, or you don't have a connection, a network of friends around you to do that kind of social stuff, right? I think socialization is very important for people, even if you're naturally more introverted. I'm not saying you have to do it all day, every day, but make sure you go out or talk to somebody or meet up with someone in person. I think that's important. And so if you don't have that accessible to you, if you go from, I'm working from home, I am now done working from home, but I am still home because I don't have much else to do, then I do the same thing tomorrow. And maybe it's okay for a couple of days, but I think that just doing that consistently leads to a little bit of unhappiness. And being like, again, I would say be cautious of just the idea of it, right? Like, what is it, the classic like romantic comedy trope, like, you're in love with the idea of me, right? Like, obviously you're kind of you might really like the idea of working remote until you really start doing it, and then it puts you in a place like, man, I thought I was going to like this more than I did. I kind of want to do something. Or again, maybe you do that, and that's fine. That's definitely your modality in which you work is definitely important. It's just do a little bit of self exploration and examination on if this is really going to be the best, or if you start a job and maybe you're in the office 5 days a week and you'd really like the remote aspect, look for a job that does a little bit of both, or a job that is more remote. Or if you started your job that's remote and then you're like, man, I would rather kind of be in the office right now, right? Like, because what's your setup at home? I mean, do you have good internet access? Do you have one of the benefits of working in an office is they provide you the equipment and materials that you need. Like a lot of employers, if you're a remote employee, they'll send you a monitor or something. So it's like, here's your monitor, here's your laptop, but that's kind of what we give you. Can you buy a desk and a chair? Do you want another monitor? Like, as opposed to, I'm in the office, they provide me with all the equipment and materials that I need. A lot of people might not think about that. If you have slow Wi-Fi, working remote is probably not a good idea.
Right. Right.
Or you might have to pay for increased or enhanced Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Can you add that to your budget? And maybe you're getting a good job where you can kind of maybe it costs a few $100s up front to get all your office equipment that you need, but you got a good job, so you can that's okay. Or maybe it's your first job and you can't really spring for a $300 monitor, $200 chair, a $150 desk, or that kind of thing. So
because all those things add up. I mean, they do add up.
It does. Yeah, I got my own keyboard and mouse set up, and so but here's what you can do. Okay, pro tip for some people who might be working.
Okay, what's the pro tip, Nick?
Bargain shop. The monitor that I'm using, so the laptop comes from the office, the monitor that I'm using, and I have two of them. I just have one set up because I like the most, but was someone that I worked with, or that I work with at my new place. We were just talking one day and she was talking about how she's setting up a garage sale. And I was like, yeah, I need a couple of computer monitors. I don't have my home office stuff set up yet. So she goes, do you want two? I was like, yeah. She was like, we were gonna garage sell them for like a couple bucks, but if we didn't sell them, we're gonna throw them away. Do you want them? I'm like, it works just fine. It's nice. It's a good monitor. She just she's a very tech person, so she has like the newest and best stuff. So she's like, I don't need this. The desk and the chair that I'm using is Chris Lang's, which it might not be familiar to the people listening, but Joni and Amber know him. So it's like whenever he went back into the office, I got those from him. And so it's like the keyboard, and so it's like I saved money here so that I could spring for like a good keyboard and like a nice mouse and that kind of thing. So it's like, think about that was one thing I didn't do well enough, was before working remote, I didn't prepare for it. I definitely just kind of got thrown into it, and all the things that I talked about in the last 20 something minutes, I learned while I was doing it, and I didn't know about it beforehand. I hadn't prepped for it. I was weird, kind of lethargic, and I didn't have my routines in place anymore. It kind of upended all of that. So I had to learn. And then my home office said I didn't know any of that. So if that's a part of your job, try to think about this stuff ahead of time, prep for it. All right, I just got this new job. I'm starting in 2 weeks. I'm going to be remote, at least as part of the time. How am I going to do this? Do I have a good setup in my apartment or my home where I can kind of set up a designated home office space? Do I have the technology that I need to do this? Do I need to buy it? What is that going to look like up front? Do I have all the things that I need? What do I need in order for me to lock into work mode? What kind of is my strategy for that? So all those kinds of things, I would say prep for that first. So, or as best you can, and sometimes things just come up that you don't really think about, but do that as best you can first so that you can kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I relate to so much of what you talked about because as an extrovert, I really struggled with that. I'm home by myself a lot. I live in the country. I have unstable internet. I really struggled with feeling lonely.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was working at home. So, I think that is really a real thing. If you're an extrovert and you need people interaction, you really do need to find a way to bring that into your work-life balance, because, I struggled with that a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and if you are, again, a little more naturally introverted, you still enjoy human interaction, right? And with other people, just kind of drains you a little bit more. But it's like, find, especially if you, let's say, went somewhere new. Like one of my coworkers who's from Kansas City, he moved out to Utah for an adventure. And so he's a remote employee, but he had to kind of develop his new friend network out there. So get plugged into the community or whatever you do. If it's late night softball league or a local, church or some sort of thing that you can do to kind of meet people that can help with this if you are working remote, right? Because again,
Right.
it's not as healthy just to be by yourself all the time. I struggle with that a little bit. The thing that helped me is that I have roommates who just live with me, but
Yeah.
like I'm home alone right now and have been all day. And so if it was like, sometimes they're, firefighters and stuff, or not sometimes, they are firefighters. So it's like they're on shift for 2 days sometimes. And so it's like, I got 2 days to the house to myself and that kind of thing. So uh, hopefully you kind of got a little bit of a experience with it. Whenever COVID initially hit and like maybe your school went fully online for a while, you kind of learned a little bit of this. Just keep that, keep that in your mind about how you felt about it then, because sometimes when you get that distance from something, you kind of glamorize what it used to be. But whenever you were whenever you were doing school from home, you're like, actually, this sucks. Or maybe you enjoyed it, right? You could have gone either way, though, right? So just kind of
Right.
remember that. That'll give you a little bit of a feel on what I like working remote, or man, I really didn't like this online school stuff. It wasn't just the fact that it's school, right? The reason that you
Right.
maybe didn't like doing school from home, it wasn't just the fact that it was school. Had to do with the remote kind of aspect of this as well.
Right.
So,
That's a lot of good stuff, Nick. I mean, anything else you would add? I mean, I think you've given a lot of good food for thought for students to think about as it relates to working remote. Anything else you'd like to share, or anything else you think you could add to the things that we've talked about today?
I'm thinking, but I think I covered a good bit of it.
You did.
I was just kind of rolling there. And
Yeah.
if don't be afraid to talk to other people, try things out. And if your first job might not be the one you're going to be at for 20 years, that's fine. Right? If you get a job, I would say the only thing I maybe would reiterate is it's an aspect of the job. It is not the job, right? It's not the career. Working remote, working in office, it's a piece of the broader puzzle. You have to like what it is that you do in order to be there long term. Or a lot of people, it's kind of the work to live versus live to work type of thing, where I'm someone who personally, like, my meaning and value and purpose and all stuff I get derived from outside of work. But when I'm passionate about what I do, that obviously it makes the work way more enjoyable. And it's like, if I was someone who just really wanted to work remote, but I did not like my job, I wouldn't be able to do that very long. So bring that into your equation when you're looking at your career and your job, but really spend the time in the interview process talking with your employer about what the job is about. Are you going to like the day-to-day tasks? Do you feel like there's going to be some meaning to your job that you're going to latch onto and enjoy? Because what we do at my place is help students graduate faster. Like, that's kind of the point. Make sure they have the availability of seats and rooms and stuff, which I dealt intimately with as an advisor. I would
Sure.
talk with people all the time about not being able to get them in classes because seats are full. And that's a very common problem, which is why we're trying to fix it. But it's like, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
Are you going to resonate with the job or career that you're in? What are the other benefits like? What's the salary like? What are the other kind of things, that you're going to weigh this into? So, people talk about it all the time. I would say don't latch on to the fact that I got to be remote, or maybe I got to be in office, or just talk with them, weigh that out in your broader decision, and don't let it just either deter you or let that be kind of the seal of approval that this is it, right? Like, just because I get to work remote 5 days a week, this is my job. You're like, you pump the brakes a little bit.
Right. I love that. And I think that's so important, because I think, especially because it has become so much more popular over the past couple of years, but I think sometimes people can make that the driving force and kind of forget about everything else. And that's not going to solve the problem of, if you don't like it, or you don't like what you're doing, or you don't like the organization, like, working remote's not going to be the thing that's going to all of a sudden make it better.
Absolutely. Well, and think about this, from the same principle applied to a different aspect of a job. And this may not resonate with everybody because some people like this, but like, imagine if you're a little bit more, extroverted, or you're going to be you want to be a nurse, or you want to be something interacting with people more. If someone were to give you, $200,000-$300,000 a year to just sit at a computer in an office or at home by yourself doing data entry, 1, 2, 3, 4, or typing code or something like that, that's not your skill set. That's not what you prefer. Like, there's a marginal benefit and cost here, and there's diminishing returns on that amount of money. Maybe you'll be able to do it for a while, but 3 years into my job of just entering in numbers when I wanted to work with people, but I decided to do it because of the money, a similar thing here, right? I mean, are you going to enjoy what it is that you do? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like the school thing. Maybe you didn't enjoy working or to going to school from home, but that wasn't necessarily just because it was school, right? You were home and you didn't really like that. So it's the same thing with the job. As
Sure.
long as you can, weigh that into it, but don't let that be the one thing that kind of like, now I need it.
Drives it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice for sure.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think let's give a round of applause for Nick. Great job.
Well,
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing all of your wisdom with our wonderful, wonderful students. They're going to really appreciate it. We certainly appreciate it. So we appreciate you so much for giving all this advice.
Of course, you're welcome. God bless.
That's so great to see you again, Nick.
That's good seeing
Good
you.
to see you too.